Hey guys, I hope you're having a good week. Today's topic is over one of my favorites. It's reincarnation. Reincarnation is the belief that the soul lives multiple cycles of life. In Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism, it is a major point to it. It's linked to the law of karma, meaning to achieve liberation, for the soul to achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth. It has to clear its karma. And while it's mostly Eastern religions that put the belief of reincarnation out there and hold it to a more plausible standard than most others, there are cases or experiences of reincarnation throughout the whole world, expanding all the way from ancient Greece, when Pythagoras believed he was a reborn celebrated Trojan warrior. Another case came in with the birth of Dorothy Eady, Eady, who was born in 1904, and at 3 she had an accident. There was some trauma, but when she came out of it, she had vivid memories of being a priestess in Egypt. She spent a lot of time at the British Museum for full clarity. So that could have been a contribution to it. But she would later go on and she changed her name to Seti, but she made many and significant discoveries in Egyptology. She went to Egypt and was able to be like, oh, I remember this from my past life, and find many artifacts. I've read cases of children remembering past lives and even going so far as to find their murderer, or telling their parental unit, oh, I used to be, your parent, your grandparent, and having full conversations about that. And it's usually around like 3 that it seems to forget. Some people retain it, but it seems like 3 is when the forgetting happens. Another interesting idea tied to reincarnation is actually that birthmarks are signifiers how one died in a previous life. Going back to the idea that reincarnation is linked to the idea of karma, meaning that what you do in this life will affect you in the next life if you have a next life. I kind of think it's a choice, in my personal opinion, but a lot of other beliefs say it's not a choice. There's others that say there's nothing after this. I'm just going to kind of go on with this video like it is, reincarnation is a thing. It's just easier at this point for me to just assume that and talk that way rather than trying to bounce back and forth. Anyway, it's linked to the law of karma, meaning what you do in this life will affect the next, should you choose to go to it. And this life is a direct correspondent to the past life. And hypnotherapy is how a lot of people will go and figure out, do past life regression, where essentially you go into a meditative hypnosis and the hypnotherapist will help guide you back to previous life. Dolores Cannon and Dr. Brian Weiss were both big hypnotherapists. Dr. Brian Weiss wasn't necessarily, really neither of them were going into it to be hypnotherapists for past life regression. It kind of just got thrust on them. They write amazing books. I've read many of them. They're all very interesting. Let's see, Dr. Brian Weiss has Same Lives. I can't think of it right now, but he has Many Lives, Many Masters, and something with Same Lives. Anyway, they are phenomenal. If you're into reincarnation, again, Dolores Cannon and Dr. Brian Weiss, I would recommend reading if you're wanting to look more into it through a hypnotherapy perspective. Anyway, in some of their cases, I found it really interesting that they would typically get a client who was full of like hatred, usually towards another group. And then it's a group like race or religious wise, prejudice or bigoted viewpoint towards another. And they would get into these sessions and they would go under and find out that in a previous life, they were part of that group that they were prejudiced against. And when they were that person, they were prejudiced against the group of people they are today. And I find that so interesting because it just kind of shows how hate can trap you in a cycle. They were just back and forth throughout these lives, just going back and forth between a type of person they hated to the other type, and then back and forth, and until they learn to accept, to not hold that hate in their heart, was it believed that they were to break that cycle. And I think that just shows how important it is to let go of hate, to let forgiveness, to hold your heart open and feel love. I know it sounds so new age, but it's true. I know there's a lot of people who can get on your nerves or aren't necessarily deserving of your love, but at the same time, you deserve to give them love and to feel that freedom, that liberation of it. Anyway, I find it interesting, and the fact that it's related to karma, because you're seeing this, and I fully believe in karma. I don't think that you need it to live another life to see it in action. I think the quickest way to see it is to look at a person going through something and to say, if you've never been in that situation, to say, if I was in that situation, I would never, or I would, because karma is just gonna, I've seen it over and over where someone looked at someone's situation and assumed how they would be, because you don't know until you're in that situation. But I guess maybe like for reincarnation, it's that by the time the cycle ended, there wasn't time to learn that, or they just wouldn't let go of it. So maybe that's why it happened. And I've heard of some cases where the people, they were reincarnated not because they had a lesson learned, but because they had a lesson they had to teach. Like maybe with Dorothy, or she went by Om Seti later, showing where these artifacts were, or Pythagoras, if he had not been reincarnated, if he was a Trojan warrior, if he hadn't decided to reincarnate, if he did, we wouldn't have oh my goodness, give me a second. The Pythagorean theorem, or so many of the other advances Pythagoras gave us in ancient Greece. So I guess it's kind of like you're either learning the lesson or you're teaching the lesson when it comes to that. In regards to the past life regression, and I actually took a hypnotherapy course, like I'm certified, I just haven't done anything with it, but it's not in the past life, and I think that's kind of what I want to do. It's just not the time for it, because I find reincarnation so exciting. And I've mentioned Dr. Brian Wise's work in it and reading his books, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm going to go into my own experiences from reincarnation at this point, which I did past life regression, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I use YouTube hypnosis. It's cheap, and hypnosis is basically just deep meditation. So if you can get like a trustworthy, I use Blue Sky hypnosis. I really liked it. But if you wanted to try it, that would be what I would recommend for a YouTube. You can search online for hypnotherapists. I know they have quantum healing hypnosis, which is in person. hypnosis based off of Dolores Cannon. It's several hours. I do not know what they charge. And then there's Beyond Quantum Healing, which is another course that can be done online. But like I said, it's just deep meditation. So like I said, I use YouTube. Anyway, I'm going to kind of go into my experiences with that because, as I said, I found Dr. Brian Wise's books around 2014, 2015, and that's when I kind of really got into the idea of past lives and reincarnation. But it was years before I finally decided, let's try this past life regression thing. So when you go into your first, and it might take a couple times because, like I said, you gotta get in the state. But I think it's really important to go in there with some sort of intention of what you want to know, because it'll help guide you. And the first time I went in there is just with the intention, what do you want me to know? And that absolutely helped change the trajectory of my life, because the past life I was given was I think it was 1600s Italy, somewhere in the Florence area. It was rural Florence area. And I was Raphael. I was a man. And I wrote poetry. And it's hard to describe, because when you're in a meditation, you are seeing this life. And you have these feelings you can feel it all. It's wild. And actually, I'll just go into it later. Anyway, as Raphael, I wrote poetry and stuff. I had this big family. I had a love called Josephine. Even now, even though that was a previous life, I can still remember her. And I'm oh, I loved her so much. Which, is wild, because I've never met this person in this life. But yeah, the big message I was given for what I guess my spirit guides in this past life wanted me to know, and they told me very clearly, Raphael did, he said, what I need you to know, him as me, is you are meant to write. He's and I am here to remind you that you used to write, so you can do it because we've already done it. Oh, I'm getting chills. Sorry. Which, I went on to write a novel, and that writing has always been my passion since I was a little, before I could write, I had journals. I'd draw pictures. I'd be bugging my mom about how to spell these words, because it's always been ingrained in me. I want to write. So that was such a big boost for me in that. And then I'm trying to remember. There was one that was really tragic. I think that was where I was going to get back to it. Because like I said, you feel a feeling. I'm feeling so light right now, by the way, after talking about my past life as Raphael, because it's just it was a good life. I was very happy. It was very loving. On the opposite, I don't remember. I think I went in there asking about a relationship. Why there was this relationship or whatever with a person. Not a relationship, but a connection. What if there was a relationship with a person from this life in a past life? And I was taken to a mental hospital in the 1800s. In the UK, Europe area. My name was Eleanor, but everyone called me Nell. And my parents died, and it's so funny because in that life I was I'm still I can still see my dead parents. They're still talking, which me now as a psychic medium, it's kind of that makes sense why I was always so scared to talk about it before, but yeah, it was feeling those heavy feelings. And there was a point I was like, no, it's time. We got to release you into the light. This life is over. Because it was literally like being haunted by a former life. And there was just this connection to this person. Like, there was this heaviness, there was this hatred almost to this person, because this person in my life now had been the one who Nell felt betrayed her and sent her to the mental hospital. They didn't believe her or understand what she was going through, which, I mean, at that time, that a lot of things could have got a woman sent to a hospital. And I'll be honest, so far, the past lives I did, like the women's lives, were not so grand. Anyway, on a lighter topic, well, I don't know if a lighter, but another thing about going in tension, there was another time I went in the tension to find out I have a fear of heights. Why I have a fear of heights so bad. Because, like, my whole life I had this dream. Well, when I was younger, it stopped after I was like 9 or 10, that I was on the shelf in my bedroom, and every night I'd dream I'd fall off, and I could feel it in my stomach. And then I just land on a pillow. And it was like that every night. And I was like, went in their attention, what is this dream about? And I was taken to a life in the 1920s as Charles. And Charles was a 19-year-old. His father had died in World War I. Him and his mom lived in New York. Oh my goodness, I might get a little sad thinking about it. But he was working on skyscrapers. A lot of people were. And he fell off one day. And the last thoughts was, about his mom. He wasn't going to make it home to his mom that day, and how sad she would be losing both her son and husband. And so, yeah, when you go into past life regression, like, yeah, it's interesting to know, but no, like, these past lives have baggages. Not, I guess, baggage, not baggages. I do English good. No. Anyway. Sorry. But yeah, it has these emotions. And even if reincarnation's not real, like, it's getting out these suppressed emotions anyways that's within you. So, I mean, I 100% recommend doing, like, past life regression or whatever. But like I said, I've had good experiences, even through the bad experiences. Like, I like to think, take any experience as a blessing, even the bads. Like, there's something to learn there. There's something good that can come out of there. Anyway, I think that's all. I had one really uneventful past life where I was just like a housewife. My husband had been to war, and he just kind of sat around staring. He was really haunted, but I had been a nurse in that one. It wasn't, it wasn't bad. It was just kind of, in that life, it felt kind of heavy, like there was a heavy duty, and it was just kind of uneventful, so. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about reincarnation for now. Like, I feel like I could keep talking for hours, but it'd just be me going around in circles about things I've already talked about. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of cool stories. I'm sure, like, everyone has, like, man, I wonder in a past life because I was obsessed with this as a kid. And I think that's always really cool to get into. So if you guys have any, like, of course, drop in the comments. Let me know. Like, it's fun. Anyway, you guys have a great day, and lots of love to you guys.